Multiclassing has always been a complex method to building a character in Dungeons & Dragons, but Baldur's Gate 3 makes this far more accessible to us. In this video today, we're going to break down how multiclassing works in BG3 by showing it in the level up screen. I'm only going to be showing a level 2 character as to keep as little spoiled as possible, but we'll be able to drill down on how skills, proficiencies, and class abilities work with multiclassing so you can better plan out your characters. For those new to my channel, the way I do things here is by upfronting the knowledge within my videos so you can decide if it's the right one for you. With that being said, the biggest change here that D&D veterans will appreciate is that prereqs for ability scores are gone. Those no longer exist. So outside of that, multiclassing will grant you any and all class abilities of said class. For example, sneak attack from a rogue, but you won't gain any repeat feats. Another example, extra attack, a feat given to pretty much most melee classes, will not stack. You will only get one instance of any feat that shares the same name. The trickiest part is how armor specializations work. The easiest way to put this is that any class that grants heavy armor will only grant that specialization if you start with it. With that being said, some classes have heavy armor as a bonus feat. So if you were a rogue that multiclasses into a war domain cleric, you'd get heavy armor since that's a subclass related feat, not a base class related feat. That's really the too long didn't watch or didn't read of this video, the TLDR as it were. And if that covers the big things you were curious about when it comes to multiclassing, then please feel free to shut the video down. I want to get you back to rampaging through BG3 and having fun. But before you head out, please don't forget to like, comment, and or subscribe. Each one of those things does help me out in a very huge way, and I greatly appreciate it. You can navigate to any part of this video that interests you the most using the chapters in both the timeline and the description. And if you need any help with any of the D&D terms that are brought up in this video, I have a full breakdown of the terms linked in the upper right-hand corner. Lastly, if you have any questions or want help, please swing on by my Twitch streams where I'll be playing a solo and a co-op playthrough, or drop into my Discord, both linked in the description and pinned comment. But let's get started here on my ultimate guide to multiclassing in Baldur's Gate 3. Loading into the game, let's go through how to multiclass. So once you get a character level, you'll see this button right here, and you press Add Class. So from this screen, you can see pretty much all of the classes you can add in, and it's going to allow you to give a little spice. And we'll go through all this stuff in its respective sections. You can press this button to get access to what proficiencies you'll be gaining from each and every one. This shows you the class features that you gain from every single one as you jump into them, whatever it is. And it's important to note that there's a difference between the word class feature and character feature, class level, and character level. Class level is the individual level of classes that you own or have, right? I'm a level 1 druid, a level 1 paladin. My character level, though, is the combine of all of those. So my combined character level would be level 2. Same thing here with it says character features. That's the combination of all of my current class features, racial features, anything like that. They all just fall into this character features section. But the most important thing here I want to talk about at the point of this section is hit points. So hit points are ass wild. Let's take a look at my base druid hit points. Every single character class has a set number of hit points. Wizards, sorcerers, warlocks, I think even bards fall into this, all have like 1d6. But then you look at clerics, or you look at druids, and I think even monks have it too, have 1d8 hit points. Fighters and paladins have 1d10, and your barbarian has 1d12, has the most hit points. Well, when you create your character, you take that max number. So let's just say in this example, this is a druid, so it's 1d8. So I would take 8 plus my constitution modifier, which is right here. So 8 plus 2 is 10. And if I want to level up, I take the average of that number. So the average of a 1d8 is 5, rounded up. It's the only time in D&D you round up. So I would add 5 hit points to my level on leveling, plus my constitution modifier, which is again that 2, which puts me at 17 hit points. Now this is when it gets spicy, is when we jump into multi-classing capabilities. So a barbarian has a 1d12, but we look at the average of it, which is a 7, And then we take a look at our Constitution modifier, which is again a 2, which equals 19 total hit points, right? We're adding 9 hit points onto our 10 base. And multi-classing means we take all those numbers and compound them across the whole entire character level. So to make this easier, let's say we're fighter level 5 and paladin level 5. That would mean that a paladin who and fighter both have 1d10. That average is 6. So we would take 6 d10 as our life. 60 hit points is basically what that equates to. And then we would take our Constitution modifier multiplied by our character level, because if we're 5 and 5, our character level is 10. So that adds 20 more hit points into it, right? So that gives us a total of 80 total hit points. Then there's also the stuff where it's if it's level 1 and all that stuff, it's probably something like 84, to be totally honest with you. But still, this is important. So if you take a look at, say, maybe playing a druid who has a 1d8 roll, and then I add in a wizard that's a 1d6, which is actually a 4 more hit points plus my Constitution modifier, it gets crazy. You don't need to worry about all that math. I was explaining it to you so you could understand why it happens. All you got to worry about is this number. After you click any single class, this number shows you the appropriate amount of hit points you're going to get. And if you don't understand why, that's exactly what I just tried to explain, is those individual hit points from that class get increased by your Constitution modifier, then added all in. So if I were a whole bunch more level of Bard, I would get that Bard's hit points. This is just something to keep in mind, because you also need to keep in mind how your intelligence works, your wisdom, your charisma, for whatever you spice into these classes, because that might be based off of their character feature or what have you, their casting capability, whatever it is. Let's now go into a conversation about proficiencies. Now, another very important thing is how your proficiencies work. And this is a very big, crucial one. I talked about it in the intro, but it's one I really want to help you understand, because you might have thought to yourself, I want to be a heavy armor wielding individual, or whatever it is. I want to use shields or specific things that maybe certain classes get as a base proficiency that you don't get if you multi-class. So I'm a druid, and druid, naturally, let's just press cancel here. I did not press cancel. There we go. A druid does not have access to heavy armor. Through any of its subclasses, anything of the sort, it gets no heavy armor. And we do know, because of my race, I have access to certain proficiencies I wouldn't normally get access to with my actual class, maybe, depending on what it is. When we add class here, that we can see Barbarian, and we see proficiencies, simple weapon and martial weapons. Druids don't get access to martial weapons. This grants them access to martial weapons. And what's nice here is, I go ahead and click Bard. Okay, well, this is going to give me light armor. Oh, I'm also going to get the skill Deception. I'm going to gain a proficiency in that. You know what? I click Fighter. And now here's my point. I'm getting simple weapons and martial weapons. But now I have light armor, medium armor, and shields. These are all things that I already had access to as a druid. So even though I already have access to those things, including simple weapons, it's still showing me that this is what is applied by this class. And like I've said, fighter and paladin both start with heavy armor proficiency. Let's go ahead and click cleric. And let's go ahead and switch over to knowledge domain. So I'm getting weapon proficiency in Morning Stars. I'm getting armor proficiency, light, medium, and shields, but then skill, arcana, and history. Oh wow, that is spicy sausage. But let's say I want heavy armor. Now, because the base class of cleric, I wish I could just turn off the domain to show that. The base class of cleric does not have heavy armor. If I click on the life domain, it adds heavy armor, or the war domain, it adds heavy armor, because those are bonus feats attached to the subclass, not to the base class. And that's crucial to understand, because a ranger who can actually start with, there we go, who can actually start with heavy armor, well, even if I take this, look at my proficiencies, Ranger Knight, it doesn't count. because this is part of the favored enemy portion. This is not my subclass. Rangers select their subclass at 2, 3. I can't remember which one it is. But because this is all part of my base package, I'm not adding heavy armor into this because it's, again, part of my base package. It's a very important thing I want to really kind of drive home about proficiencies, because I don't want you to build your character out thinking you're going to get maybe a martial weapon proficiency because you chose a cleric. Well, nope, you actually have to choose the war domain to get that martial weapon proficiency. I think in general you would have to, because it's not part of the base cleric package. So keep those things in mind with your proficiencies. Make sure you're looking at this thing on the right here to make sure this coincides with however you want to build out your character and the proficiencies you have in mind, because those are going to be very important, right? You're going to get your subclass features that are going to add into this whole little kind of character features persistent portion of the page here. Like War Priest, okay, when you make an unarmed or weapon attack, you can spend a War Priest charge to make an additional bonus action. So just wanted to explain how these proficiencies work, because there's also class features that might work a little bit differently. Before we actually talk about those class features, let me just show you the list of proficiencies that you will gain from any class that you go into. That way you don't have to click around if you don't want to. You can just have this up, press pause, go ahead and go through it. I'm going to link you guys to a website that has pretty much all this information in text form. Some stuff might have changed and whatnot, but you can find that in the description. Let's now move over to some class features. And one last thing too on proficiencies here. I forgot about this, so I will add it in later. Proficiency bonus, that +2 you get for having a proficiency in a skill, or something that says, hey, you know, your strength saving throw, you have a proficiency in it, so you get that proficiency bonus. That number will increase over time based on your level. When you multi-class, it doesn't change that scaling. It still goes off of the combined amount of levels. So for example, if you have 2 druid, 3 fighter, then you have level 5, which would probably give you a proficiency bonus from 2 up to 3. You don't go off of the individual class level or the last class level. It's your combined level. That's important to know, because proficiency bonuses will come into a very huge portion of your game as you play through it. Now, finally, into class features. So class features are stuff like, hey, I'm playing a rogue and I have sneak attack. That's awesome, right? That's my class feature. Other class features would include stuff like extra attack. A fighter, for example, at level 5 gets access to extra attack. And extra attack has a slightly different verbiage in Baldur's Gate 3 than it did in D&D. The verbiage here is can make an additional free attack after making an unarmed or weapon attack. Slightly different verbiage, but I wanted to just kind of be transparent about that. So extra attack, well, paladins get it too, and rangers and barbarians. I think a monk does. I don't remember all the classes that get extra attack, but you don't, let's say you had 4 or 5 levels in all of these abilities, all these classes that would get you extra attack. You only get 1 instance of extra attack. They don't stack. There's nothing like that. Another example here would be Barbarian, who has unarmored defense. While not wearing armor, you add your Constitution modifier to your armor class. You do not get multiple instances of unarmored defense. You just get whatever one that you had as your parent one if you've already had it. Monk, for example, here has it, and Sorcerer, if they choose the bloodline of Draconic, they get Draconic Resilience, which I actually think is different than unarmored defense. So I wanted to bring that up here, because when you aren't wearing armor, your base armor class is 13. I believe this is different than unarmored defense, but still my point remains, any instance of unarmored defense, you don't get repeat instances of it where you stack a bunch of different abilities to get different modifiers into your unarmored defense. It's not the same. I'm bringing up Barbarian and Monk as my 2 clear examples. But there's another feature that you might think has overlap, and it is Paladin and Cleric. Both Paladin and Cleric have Channel Divinity. Paladin gets it at a later level, Cleric gets it at level 2. And Channel Divinity is an ability that will allow them to do certain things dependent upon their domain or their oath. And those number of things that can happen multiple times before a long rest. This would be an instance of something that has the same name, but you still get it. If you have let's just say a life domain cleric and a Oath of Ancients paladin, you would get both of their Channel Divinity capabilities. You would just have to choose which one you want to use, because it'll say Channel Divinity : turn undead, Channel Divinity : do whatever the other one is. So since they are kind of like sub features within a parent feature, you will still gain access to all different Channel Divinity features, but you will not get access to additional uses of Channel Divinity just because you have levels in both Cleric and Paladin. You will only get the appropriate Channel Divinity uses that you would be granted otherwise. You don't say, oh, you know what? It stacks up, and since it gives me 1 from Paladin and 2 from Cleric, I got 3. No, you just would have the 2 from Cleric, just to give you an example. So any of those class features that you're looking to add in, just make sure they don't repeat upon themselves, because they will not spice themselves into your build. But other things will, right? Like, okay, if I go click on Warlock, I go to class features, I get my Warlock spell slots. Sneak attack for your rogue is in here. You get your bardic inspiration. So other class features that are a big hallmark of the class, rage here, those do come in with your respective multi-classing capabilities. And a lot of them too can work very synergistically into each other. I work in a corporate office when I say that word. But rage is a really good example. Like picking one level of barbarian for any pure melee class is almost always amazing, because you just get rage. It's just free. It does awesome things. Or if you're playing fighter and you get 2 levels into fighter, you get the class feature of action surge, which allows you to have another action once before a long rest. That's a huge amount of utility that you can spice into almost any single class. So make sure that you take a look at those class features and what they are by looking at each individual class, either on the BG3 wiki, in the 5th edition handbook, whatever it is, that shows you when you get those class features to see how you want to spice them into your character. Probably one of the densest subjects to talk about is how spellcasting works when you do any kind of multi-classing, because you have 3 different things to kind of, or I guess maybe 4 things to take into consideration when it comes to spellcasting. Spells known, spells prepared, your spell slots, and whether or not you've got packed magic. And packed magic, I'll just say that up front. No matter how many times you multi-class away from or into Warlock, your packed magic only applies to your Warlock spell slots. You gain a spell slot, a Warlock spell slot, used to cast Warlock spells. Regain Warlock spell slots by taking a short rest, which is different than the other spellcasting classes. So this is a special spell slot that only you get access to. And remember, packed magic will cast it at the highest level possible for the Warlock. So if I'm a Warlock 5 and Wizard 10 and Sorcerer 5, it doesn't matter how many levels I have in other classes. As a Warlock spell slot, I will only cast spells at the highest level that a Warlock can cast spells, because that's how the Warlock spell slot works. And then short resting will only regenerate my Warlock spell slots. It's a special thing. It's called Pack Magic in 5th edition, but here it's just called a Warlock spell slot. So just wanted to kind of talk about that very quickly before we dive into now the Wizard. Now the Wizard is where, and it's not just simply Wizard, it's the other spell slots and spells learn and all that crap. So let's use the Wizard for example, and let's use the Ranger for example, because both of them have spell slots. As you can see, they both have spell slots. And I said sluts, that's right. Let's assume my character is Ranger 4 and Wizard 3. So when it comes to determining what spells you know and how many you can prepare, you look at the class individually, not as your combined classes. So for my example of Ranger 4 and Wizard 3, I don't look at it as class level 7. I look at it as Ranger 4. So for Ranger 4, I know the 3 first level Ranger spells based on your levels in the Ranger class. That is outright what it is supposed to be. Then if I'm a Wizard at level 3, so a 3rd level Wizard, I would then know 3 Wizard Cantrips, and my spellbook would contain 10 Wizard spells, and 2 of which can be 2nd level spells. Now here's another portion where it's going to get a little bit trickier. It's going to be based also off of my intelligence. So, Ranger uses its wisdom to cast spells. A Wizard uses its intelligence to cast spells. So my ability to prepare spells of the wizard variety is going to be based off of my intelligence, as you can see right here, right? But if I switch over to ranger, my ability to cast spells and tap into that is going to be based off of my wisdom. Or cleric, for example, here would be based off of my wisdom. That's maybe a better example. Same thing with druid, right? So keep those things in mind when it comes to multi-classing. You know what? Hey, I'm a fighter and I'm going to multi-class into a wizard, so help me God. Well, if you're going to do that, make sure you have the intelligence to do it, or else you will not have near any spells prepared. You can work on your cantrips, absolutely. Remember, cantrips are 0 level spells, meaning you can cast them without expelling a slot, without having to prepare it. You just kind of know it through writ and learn and training and blah, 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 blah. Now, outside of those spells are your spell slots. And this is a part that I am even shaky on. It is very hard to explain this concisely, so I apologize if I miss anything up here. So your spell slots, these total amount of slots that you've got, right? These little, let's go back to a cleric here, because it's these slots that you get here, and these little guys. The total amount of slots that you have is by adding all of your levels in Bard. There it is. Bard, Cleric, Druid, Sorcerer, and Wizard. You add all those levels up to determine your spell slots. You add half of the levels, rounded down, for Paladin and Ranger. You'd use then that total to determine how many spell slots you have. So, for example here, if I was a level 10 Wizard and a level 4 Ranger, I would have 12 spell slots, right? Because I would take my Ranger, round it, cut it in half, round it down to 2. Well, it would just be 2. And then my Wizard would be just 10. Just a 1-to-1 for that. So what I would then look at is, I would not have 12 spell slots. I would look at, that is my multi-class spellcaster level. So for a 12th level, that would mean I would have 4 first, I'll show you a chart for this, 4 first level, 3 second, 3 third, 3 fourth, 2 fifth, and 1 6th level spell. The reason that this is it just kind of, I guess, waters down, I suppose you can say. The point of it is that you don't just get like tons and tons and tons of spell slots by taking all these casting classes. It helps to kind of limit in some way your max spell casting capability, because this way you can't pull from every single, like let's say I just did 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and I had all these spells to take advantage of. Well, rather than the game allowing me to cast every single spell at that combined level, it's telling me, hey, you know what? You've spread yourself so thin across all these different schools of spell casting. Yeah, sure, you can cast a good amount of spells, but you can't cast very potent ones because you've spread yourself across the gamut. Versus, hey, you know what? I am a level 20, or I'll say, because of BG3, I'll say level 12 wizard. Well, I can't cast I can cast more potent spells than a level 6 ranger and a level 6 paladin, because they would take their spells and round them down, right? They wouldn't be a 12, they would be a 6. So, and again, that might be a little bit off, but so my point remains here that this is a way to kind of balance out multi-classing from pure casters, so that it kind of represents, hey, I have solely dedicated myself to casting this specific art. I should be rewarded rather than penalized for not multi-classing. So again, one more time, just to reiterate, if you're multi-classing for different spellcasters, you'll have access to a wider range of spells, but your potency, as far as the level of spell that you can cast, will be either limited or greatly reduced, as far as being able to cast into 7th or 8th level spells and what have you. So that is how spellcasting works here for multi-classing. It is an absolute hornet's nest and very complex, and you might need to re-watch this a couple times. I think looking at the chart that I'm going to have up in front of you will really help out in understanding this, how these multi-class spellcaster spell slots per level work. But it is a very crucial point of understanding the multi-class. And the last subject related to spells I want to touch on is cantrips very quickly. Now, cantrips will not scale off of the level. It will scale off of your player level. So if I have class level 4 wizard and class level 4 druid, my player level is 8. So the cantrip will scale off of that, not the individual class level. So it's a very confusing thing to understand which things scale off of which, but it's just kind of how I wanted to create some transparency in that, so you can better, again, plan out which classes you want to jump into and at what point, so to get access to their cantrips or what have you. And at that, it brings our video here to a close. Now, this is a very dense subject, and I might have really confused you in some regard, but the game really lays out a lot of this information very easy for you to digest and jump into. I wanted you to understand what's going on underneath the hood so that you can understand why you're not getting so many hit points as a wizard. You can understand why you didn't get heavy armor if you went into a fighter subclass, or maybe you'd understand why your spell slots are really kind of screwy because you went with Paladin, Ranger, and Wizard where you were hoping to get more spell slots. The game is very complex when it comes to multi-classing in the pen and paper version, but Baldur's Gate 3 does a very good job of trying to remove the numbers crunch for you and just show you raw information of what you get. Hey, this is what you're going to get when you press this button. Here's all the things represented, your actions, your cantrips, your spells, your class features, your blah, 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 your hit points. It's all there for you. So you don't have to guess what you're getting. But again, understanding why you get it helps you to plan out how you want to get it for every single class that you decide to multi-class in. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. If you have any questions, you're concerned about how to multi-class, you're confused about other things, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. Drop on by the stream, ask questions there. I'll be playing with someone who's been playing D&D for like 20 plus years, so he can field all those big crunchy questions and I can say, yeah, this is how Baldur's Gate works, stuff like that. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.